Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to Level Up Your Japa. Today we're on part 2 of a 3-part series. So today we're going to be talking about the role of sleep and time management in relation to your japa. In the last class, we talked about japa as the foundation of our spiritual life. We talked about Lord Chaitanya's personal example, and we talked about the 3 stages of chanting. And I'm going to put a link for that video here so that you guys can go and watch that one if you haven't seen it already, or if you want to do a little refresher before doing this one. And then in the 3rd part, we're going to be talking about how to deal with distractions and then the mode of goodness and beyond. So let's get started today. We have 2 main topics. One is the role of sleep, and 2 is time management. Those are the topics for today. So first, just as we did last time, and you are welcome to participate in this if you like, it's not necessary. You can skip to the next part, but we had a japa self-assessment last time. And the purpose was just for you to gauge yourself throughout these series to see what's the quality of your japa in the beginning, what's the quality, or how does the quality improve as you go through these classes and apply some of the principles that you've learned. So what we had last time, and again this time, is on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being the worst, which is japa is a burden that I do only out of duty. I try to distract myself with other things while I chant. And then it's not always a burden. Sometimes I try to be attentive. And then 10 is my taste for japa knows no limits, and I want to chant 24/7. So what we did last time was, on a scale of 0 to 10, just honestly assess where you're at, because when you assess where you're at, if your number is very low, then what we learned in the last class was that you have the power to take remedial action. And so you can improve your japa. You just want to first see where you're at and see what you might need to do to bring that that attentiveness, or that attempt, I should say, to be attentive up closer to the higher end of the scale. So just take a look, take a moment. You can pause the video, see if your japa has changed at all since the last class, and if you've applied any of the principles from the last class. Did it make a difference? Did it improve your japa at all? Did your japa go down in grade since the last class? And so first is figuring out what the trouble is, right? What we talked about last time, and then troubleshooting. So if it's gone down since then, feel free to get in touch with me. I put my email address in all the descriptions, and then we can maybe troubleshoot some more. If it has gone up, then you can see that you're heading in the right direction. So take a moment to think about that. And again, you can keep track of this on a notepad or on your phone, where your numbers are at as you go through this series. And once you've done that, once you've assessed yourself, there's another question that you can ask in relation to your japa, and that is, are my material desires decreasing? Because as we increase our attempt to chant attentively, we increase our taste for chanting. And when we increase our taste for chanting, we naturally lose taste for material desires. So it's another way to assess your situation, is to see, are my material desires decreasing? Are they increasing? Are they staying the same? It's another thing to take into consideration. This is something that should be happening. It's like a scale. If your spiritual desires go up, your material desires go down, and vice versa. If your material desires go up, your spiritual desires go down. So it's another good way, good easy way to assess. And you'll notice that as you try more and more to be attentive, you will notice that your material desires will start to decrease. So that's another thing that you can start to keep track of. And again, this is not a static thing. This isn't just, okay, my material desires started to decrease, and then the following week my material desires increased, so that's it, I failed, I messed up, I'm done for. This is again, it's going to fluctuate, right? One week we're going to feel like we did a really great job of trying to be attentive, and another week it's going to get thrown off track, and our material desires may increase, decrease, they're all over the place. So it's nothing to be despondent about. It's just something you could kind of keep track of. You know, when people do a business and they have websites or they have shops, online shops, they have analytics, right? So what it shows is how many people visited, and those out of those people who visited, how many converted into sales and so on. And so what people do is they use those analytics to see, well, today I added this thing to my website and it brought my sales up. And another day I took this thing off of my website and my sales went down, or whatever. Maybe I added something and it made my sales go down. And so people, they're constantly looking at the analytics to see, is my shop or my business getting progressively better, or is it kind of all over the place, or is it steadily decreasing? And if so, they use that information to try to improve. They want, obviously they want the sales or they want the business to increase. And so they use those analytics to tweak their business to try to improve it. So you can see a spiritual life, and especially Japa, the same way. I'm looking at the analytics. This week, my material desires were up around 8. Last week, they were down around 5. What was the difference? This week, I was able to pay attention more easily. Last week, I wasn't. What's the difference? What happened? What did I do? Did I eat something? Did I watch something? Did I hang out with a certain crowd that maybe brings my consciousness down? So we can do those analytics. So just take the time to think about that for a moment. Again, you can press pause. You can journal about this. You can write down your numbers. And you can actually do this. I wouldn't necessarily do it on a daily basis because you might start to feel a little discouraged. So you might want to do it snapshots of maybe 5 days, 6 days, 7 days at a time, where you say, this week, this is what my Japa was like. It was kind of up and down. This week, it was a little more steady. So that could help you to kind of see a progression and really take note of what's affecting you in a positive way and what's affecting you in a negative way. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the role of sleep first. We're going to talk about the benefits of good sleep, the detriments of bad sleep, and sleep and your Japa. So I watched a few interviews with this sleep specialist. His name is Dr. Matthew Walker. You can look him up online. He's been studying sleep, I think, for the past 20 years. And what got him into the field was that he was studying Alzheimer's patients, what was going on in their brain. And he realized that he was looking at what was going on at their brain while they were awake. And then I think he said at one point he spent the whole weekend trying to figure out why he wasn't finding any information about a change in the way the brain acted. And he realized that he should check their brain while they sleep. And that's where he found the information that he needed, or at least some information, and it got him into this whole field of studying the sleep and its effects on the human brain and moods and physical well-being and emotional well-being. So he said sleep is the single most effective thing you can do to reset your brain and body health. If I were to deprive you of exercise, food, or water for a day, or I were to deprive you of sleep for 24 hours, and I were to map your brain and body impairments, it's not even a competition. That one night of lost sleep relative to those other things, it dwarfs them. Sleep is your life support system. So here's a list of the benefits that he gave for good sleep, that the benefits it has to your emotional and physical well-being. So he said it restocks the weaponry in your immune arsenal, making you more immune robust, so you don't get sick as easily. It regulates your blood sugar levels, and it controls your appetite hormones, right? So it's easier to control your eating and not overeat. It fixates memories and helps you learn and remember. Very handy for when we're studying Prabhupada's books and teaching them. It de-escalates anxiety. When we have service to do, or even any situation in life where there's maybe a stressful incident that happens, getting proper sleep, not getting proper sleep can escalate that situation and make it more difficult to deal with. So getting proper sleep can help us deal with issues much more easily. It reduces your emotional difficulties and traumas. and it cleanses away the Alzheimer's toxic proteins that build up in the brain. So that was what he was finding out when he studied Alzheimer's patients in their sleep. So there are these toxic proteins, and when you sleep, it removes them. Now, he did mention that there were some political leaders who had talked often about how they only slept 4 hours every night. And they both ended up getting Alzheimer's disease, and that was Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. He doesn't think it's a coincidence. And so doing these studies, he's seeing how important it is to actually get proper sleep. Okay, detriments of bad sleep. Underslept employees and leaders, they did a study in the workplace. So we can replace employees and leaders with temple presidents and congregation or residents in a temple, people who do service under different leaders, ashram leaders, temple presidents, general managers, and so on. So just try to imagine that when we're applying what we learn here. So they choose less challenging problems. They don't dig into deep project work. They just check emails, listen to voice messages, etc. So basically, you show up to work and you're like, yeah, I know there's a bunch of stuff to do, but I'll just kind of waste time with just doing the simple stuff. And then I'll look busy, but I'm not going to really get into challenging problems. So that for us in a temple or an outreach center situation, how does that show up? Well, we may not be trying to figure out how to spread the mission. We may be just kind of getting busy work done, right? Rather than saying, let's think about this. What can we do to improve the number of guests that come to our Sunday program, or the number of guests that come to one of our other weekday programs, or the number of people who are moving into our ashram? We don't really think about problem solving. We just engage ourselves in busy work because it's easier for the brain to deal with if you're underslept. Okay, and of the problems they do take on, they will produce fewer creative solutions. Creativity and ingenuity are the two engines that drive businesses forward in terms of their productivity and revenue. So let's think again about a temple or an outreach center. Creativity and ingenuity, right? Coming up with creative ideas how to attract and teach people about Krishna consciousness. This is what will drive the mission forward. And so we want to make sure we have the proper rest to do that. When they work in teams, they will slack off. They will let others do their work, or social loafing. So in a temple situation, you might have a team of devotees working together, and there may be some that are just kind of tired and doing whatever they can to stay awake, but hoping that others in the group get more done so that they can get out of there as quickly as possible because they're so tired, or that they don't have to put out much energy because they don't have much energy. So imagine a team of devotees working together to get a project done, and every single one of them is awake and alert and ready to dig in deep to challenging problems and come up with creative ideas. Imagine what we can get done. And they're more deviant. They're more likely to fudge data in spreadsheets, more likely to falsely claim money for reimbursement that was inappropriate. We may not necessarily see this, for example, in an ashram setting. But the point being that, again, that lack of sleep leads somebody to not exactly do the job the way that they're supposed to. The more or less sleep that a business leader has had from one night to the next, the more or less charismatic the employees will rate that business leader from one day to the next. So again, if you're a leader in an ashram or an outreach center, you really want to inspire those who are working under you. You want to work together with them as a team, and even if what you're having them do may be beneficial to society, they may not feel like they want to follow you into that endeavor because they may find that somehow it's not inspiring. And of course, in Krishna consciousness, we should all be, ideally, we're all fired up about Prabhupada's mission, no matter how tired the leader is. But everything we can do to inspire people to help and be inspired in the mission, we should do. Okay, and they will take on average 11 more sick days throughout the year relative to well-slept individuals. So anybody who's lived in a temple knows how often service has to get covered. If someone's healthy and awake, that'll probably happen less often. If we make sure that the residents get enough sleep. And of course, I'm speaking mostly about ashrams and outreach centers right now, perhaps. But even our work, a devotee who lives outside of an ashram and has a job, you can apply these same things. How challenging is it for you to get up and chant your rounds and go to work and be able to do your job properly and come home, maybe read Prabhupada's books? Very, very challenging to do as it is. What to speak of if someone is underslept. It makes it's super tedious. Okay, and then 7, utilization of health resources increases by about 80%. Rates of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, mental health conditions all escalate with increase of being underslept. So this body was given to us by Krishna. It's meant to be used in Krishna's service, and we should maintain it properly as property belonging to Krishna. And maintaining it properly means getting proper sleep and proper nourishment. Okay, so here's what he said about what happens when they've studied people who get 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night for 1 week. Levels of blood sugar are disrupted to the point of pre-diabetic. Blood pressure raises. Heart rate increases. You start to head towards obesity, cardiovascular disease, anxiety, depression, and compromised immune system. So not getting enough sleep has more effects on our physical well-being than we would imagine, because you know that when you have those nights where you didn't get a good night's sleep, or you just went to bed late but had to get up early, what we often think is, okay, it's going to be a little uncomfortable, but I'll power through, right? That's what we do. And we don't realize what's going on internally in our body and even in our mind and our brain when we don't get proper sleep. So we can push through, and someone may have gotten even good at convincing themselves that, you know, I don't need that much sleep. I just power through the day and I keep myself inspired. But there are so many other things going on. So we really do want to make sure that the body that Krishna gave us is taken care of properly. It's given to us on loan. And so it's almost like when you rent something, you're not going to bring it back destroyed. You're going to take proper care of it. And so we've been lent this body to use in Krishna's service, and it should be maintained properly. Okay, so sleep in japa. Good sleep facilitates attentive chanting. So this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam 3:26-30. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. So your intelligence controls your mind. And so when you're attempting to chant attentively, it's your mind that wanders, and it's your intelligence that brings it back. And so you want to get enough sleep so that your intelligence is sharp enough to control your mind as much as possible while you're chanting. So this is the purport. Smriti means memory and swapa means sleep. Sleep is also necessary to keep the intelligence in working order. If there is no sleep, the brain cannot work nicely. In Bhagavad Gita, it is especially mentioned that persons who regulate eating, sleeping, and other necessities of the body in the proper proportion become very successful in the yoga process. These are some of the aspects of the analytical study of intelligence, as described in both the Patanjali Yoga system and the Sankhya philosophy system of Kapila Dev in Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's right here in the Bhagavatam. Sleep is required to keep the intelligence in working order. And the intelligence is required to keep the mind in control. And it's required to keep the mind in control to be as attentive as you can while you chant your japa. So this was something else that Dr. Matthew Walker said. It's during REM sleep, and particularly during dreaming, that we take all the individual pieces of information that we've been learning, and we start interconnecting them and associating them with all of our back catalog of stored information. You go to sleep with the pieces of the jigsaw, but you wake up with the puzzle complete. And I would argue that that's the difference between knowledge, which is remembering the individual pieces, and wisdom, which is knowing what it all means when you fit them together. So if we think about our day, if we're reading Prabhupada's books, we're learning the philosophy, we want to teach the philosophy. We want to control our minds when we're chanting japa as much as possible. Then it's sleep that helps us take those pieces that we've learned throughout the day and put them together, and that's wisdom, right? Because intelligence is required, of course. The intelligence keeps the brain working, it controls the mind, but we also need wisdom. We have examples in the Bhagavatam of different demons who were very intelligent and not very wise. You have Hiranyakashipu, for example. He was preaching Vedic philosophy to his family, but he wasn't very wise. And you have Ravana. He was very intelligent, but not very wise. And so it's putting all the pieces of the puzzle together and knowing what the bigger picture is. That's wisdom. And in order to do that, you need proper sleep. So this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, 16, and 17. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much, or does not sleep enough. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. So we want to find that balance. What is enough sleep? So being regulated in your habits is very important. And Krishna's got all the bases covered. You don't sleep too much or too little. You don't go to either extreme. You keep it moderate and just regulate your habits. Eating, sleeping, recreation, and work. Okay, so we talked about this in the first Japa, Level Up Your Japa class, was pramada, or inattentiveness, right? So that's the stage of namaparad, offensive chanting. So, and I had explained that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has taught us that the root offense that makes the other offenses that are difficult to deal with is inattentiveness in our chanting. So that's pramada. So there's 3 types of pramada we had talked about: sleep, distraction, and lack of intensity or lack of interest or apathy. So sleep, again, this is a big factor in trying to chant our rounds attentively, which is required in order to make progress in Krishna consciousness through the stages from Shraddha to Prema, right? Because in the last class we talked about getting stuck at Bhajana Kriya and what's required to go through an Artha-nivritti so that you can then become fixed. So we see right here, sleep is one of those things. Sleep is one of the things that cause inattentiveness. Okay, so let's talk about some tips for good sleep. So one is to be regular. You want regularity. Sleep in a totally dark room. If you have street lights near your window, or you have night lights on in your room or something to that effect, it can affect your sleep in a way that you don't even know is happening. So there are different things, physical processes that take place in the body to heal the different organs. I know the pancreas secretes something. I don't remember all the science behind it, but the organs do different things while you're asleep. But it requires, that kind of deep sleep requires you to be in a dark room. I try to get my room as dark as I can. I don't have any night lights on. Try to cover up the windows with shades at night so there's not much light coming in. If I have, for example, an AC unit in my window in the summer, I tape something over all the lights, you know, the display on the AC unit, so that there's not all this bright light coming from different places in my room. And that'll give you better sleep, and that'll help your body recover and do all the things that it needs to do to maintain your health. I like to dim the lights in my room, not so much that I can't read, but I like to have not like this bright, 5,000 Kelvin light bulb, that's super bright white light in my room before I go to bed. Typically sunset hours are a warmer light. So if you have a warm light bulb like 2,700 Kelvin or 3,000 Kelvin, actually probably below 3,000, but around there, and it's not too bright, it'll help your body to relax. If anyone doesn't know what Kelvin is, it's a rating system of how cool or warm the the type of light is coming out of a light bulb. So at the lower end of the scale, around 2700, is the very warm color light, which is kind of yellow. And then as you get higher in the numbers, up to 5000, it's more like daylight, which is white light. And so those aren't great for the evening. So I like to have a warmish light in my room, not too bright. It helps my mind to settle down and to start feeling sleepy. An hour before bed, avoid computer, phone, and tablet screens. Now, I know they have an eye comfort shield, and I know that you could dim the screen, but just in general, being on YouTube or being reading the news or something like that, it's not going to help you relax. And that blue light from your screen, I think even when you turn it on eye comfort shield, it kind of turns yellow, but it's still a very kind of intense light. Best is to just have a physical book or something else you can do that doesn't require you to look at a screen. Because when you're looking at that screen, one of the things that helps you fall asleep and stay asleep is melatonin. And if your body, if you have white kind of daylight type of light entering into your eyes before bed, your body doesn't produce as much melatonin because it thinks it's not time for bed yet, because it's getting that that signal from the white light that no, these are still daylight hours. So just not looking at those screens, and plus it's very stimulating. If you're online and you're scrolling or you're looking at videos, it's still stimulating. You want to start to relax and produce more melatonin, because once you do fall asleep, it helps you to get better sleep and stay asleep. Okay, cool room. I noticed that in the summer, if I don't set the AC at the right temperature, it wakes me up in the middle of the night if it gets too warm in the room. So a cool room with a blanket perhaps will help you sleep better than a really warm room and you just toss off the blankets. If it's possible to do that, at least to have a fan on in the summer. And then in the winter, not to turn up the heat too high, but to keep it very cool. Last meal digested. Don't go to bed on a full stomach. Try to get your meal digested however long that takes. So if it takes you 2 to 3 hours to digest a meal, and you're going to bed at 8:30, you want to try to finish your last meal by 6 o'clock, right? So you can schedule that into your time to eat at the proper time so that it's not right before bed. Daily walk. This helps a lot, and I've seen for myself it's very helpful, and I've seen for others who have gone for walks with me, they've said that that night they had a much better night's sleep and they didn't have to sleep as much actually. So getting your meal digested, then just going even for a 20-minute walk, half-hour walk, a brisk walk, can help you to get a good night's sleep. I definitely sleep less when I do proper exercise. And then naps. If you have to take a nap, better not to take naps, but if you have to, if you're so exhausted that you can't get any significant work done during the day and it's hard to chant your rounds, don't go past 20 minutes. 10 minutes is best. I can't remember what it's called, but there's something, and it's not melatonin, but there's some other chemical in the brain. They build up throughout the day so that by the time you go to bed, it's easy to fall asleep. When you take a nap, that stuff gets cleared away. That's why if you take a really long nap and then you try to go to bed at night, it's really difficult to fall asleep. And so you want those, you don't want to wipe those away. You don't want to clean them out of your brain. So naps shouldn't be too long, just a refresher. And then if you didn't have a good night's sleep the night before and you feel like you need more than 20 minutes, just try to at least power through that day and reset the clock, where you go to bed at an early hour that night and just kind of start your next day on a better schedule, if possible. Okay, so, and just so you know, in case you watch movies or TV shows on Netflix or Prime every once in a while, they're built to, at least Netflix, the CEO of Netflix has claimed publicly that they're in a battle against people's sleep. He said there's such a broad range of things that you did to relax and unwind, hang out and connect, and we compete with all of that. More specifically, explains Hastings, there are only a certain amount of hours which humans can tend to activities, and Netflix's goal is to occupy those moments and deliver the utmost joy to the consumer during that opportunity. He said, you get a show or a movie you're really dying to watch, and you end up staying up late at night. So we actually compete with sleep, he said of his number one competitor, and we're winning. So just keep it in mind, these platforms were built to keep you addicted, to keep you hooked on watching, binge watching, and staying up late and not getting proper sleep. And so if you know that you might get hooked on binge watching, it's better just not to pick it up to begin with. But I think knowing what's going on behind the scenes, knowing what's going on, what the CEO is actually trying to do, it's pretty diabolical. I mean, I know he wants to make money, but to say that we're competing with people's sleep is to completely disregard how much damage is being done to people's physical and emotional well-being. So these are kind of good things to know, because it's easy to say, okay, you fall for the ads, there's a TV show, it looks really awesome, or a new miniseries, and you want to watch it. Just remember that that's one of the things that they're trying to do is take away the very thing that keeps you healthy, which is good sleep. Okay, so proper amount of sleep. 7 to 9 hours is recommended by sleep specialists, and they say less or more than this is not recommended. So less than 7, more than 9. It's not that the longer you sleep, the better. And then 6 hours. In fact, Prabhupada, some places says 5 to 6 hours recommended by Prabhupada. So how do we reconcile that? What Prabhupada says and what science says. I can only speak with my own experience, and it kind of matches up with the other things that Prabhupada says. Prabhupada says in many places that if you eat too much, then you need more sleep. So remember I was saying earlier that when I go for a walk, I don't need as much sleep. And especially if my food is digested before bed, I don't need as much sleep. So if I finish my last meal, let's say 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I go for a very brisk walk at a certain point during the day, and I follow all those other tips of keeping my room cool, making sure that I was hydrated before bed, not right before bed because you don't want to be visiting the bathroom all night. But I find that when I do all of those things, I usually can't even stay asleep past 6 hours. So I think when Prabhupada recommends this, it's assumed that a person will eat properly and exercise properly. We saw Prabhupada went for walks all the time, right? And so the way he ate and the way he exercised, of course, we know he only slept 3 to 4 hours. And he says in many places not to imitate. So he said you can't just go from getting this many hours of sleep to imitating what he sometimes cites as the 6 Goswamis, how little sleep they got. He said you can't imitate, you gradually work your way there. And so as a person makes advancement in Krishna consciousness, they may be reducing their eating, right? They're really just eating what's necessary. And they may be busy enough that they get proper exercise and not so busy that they burn themselves out. Because there's the other side of this. There's one side is not getting any exercise. And so when you don't get exercise, surprisingly, you would think it would make you more tired, but when you get exercise, it actually gives you more energy. But then there's the other side of it where you might spend, maybe there's a festival, and for 2 days in a row, you're cooking for 2,000 people. There's lots of heavy lifting. There's lots of sweating in the kitchen. It's very hectic. Whenever that happens, something like that, you'll probably need to catch up on sleep. You'll probably need to sleep a few extra hours than the normal range of hours that you would sleep, and there's nothing wrong with that. Catching up on your sleep after an intense festival is something you should do. On a daily basis, if we keep our health in order and we exercise and we don't overeat, we can probably do 7 or less hours of sleep. But we should never force ourselves unnaturally to get less sleep than our body actually needs. I wouldn't go until we get to a really advanced stage where we don't really need sleep anymore. I wouldn't go below 6 hours. And that's only 6 hours if you feel like you're not completely exhausted. So sometimes I'll do an experiment where I won't set an alarm. And on a morning that I don't have to set an alarm, I'll go to bed at a reasonable hour, I'll have exercised, eaten properly, and I sleep until I wake up so that I could see approximately how much time do I need to sleep. Currently for me, I naturally wake up after 6.5 to 7 hours. That's just natural. And so I'm just sticking with that for now. And then that way I'm able to try to chant attentively. I'm able to get work done throughout the day without falling asleep, without needing to take a nap, without feeling like I'm drudging through my work. I actually am just alert, and I can see that my mind is more creative and more able to deal with issues that come up if I've gotten that proper sleep. So our next topic is time management. It's actually our second topic. That's a typo that I put a 1 next to it. But this is our second topic for this session. And this is, we're going to talk about prioritizing your priorities and maintaining balance. Okay, so you want to ask yourself some questions when you are getting ready to manage your time properly. First question, what are your top priorities in your day? Next is, how many hours of sleep do you need? These are things you want to make a list of. How many hours of sleep do you need? After you do that experiment. And then how many hours do your top priorities need, right? Because if they're your top priorities, you got to fit them in the day. So you got to know how much time it takes. And then what else do you want to accomplish during your waking hours, your long and short-term goals? And when I say long and short-term goals, what I usually mean is you have long-term goals, you have a vision about something you want to accomplish, and your short-term goals are the steps that take you to accomplish that long-term goal. Okay, so top priorities, I'm giving 3 examples here. So Japa is always the top priority, right? And it really is important for us to read Prabhupada's books every day. Reading Prabhupada's books, he says in one purport in the Bhagavatam that with, don't quote me exactly, but he says something to the effect of, with progressive reading, the Bhagavatam becomes more and more luminous. And so it really is another way to inspire us and to learn about Krishna, is to read Prabhupada's books. So example 1, Japa takes, I'd say, approximately 2 hours. Reading Prabhupada's books, if you want to read them, for an hour. And then if you're in an ashram, your service in your morning program might be part of your top priorities. These are things you have to do. If you have a job, top priorities, Japa, reading, and work. Work takes up, when you have a job, it takes up the majority of your day. So example 3, let's say again, you're either in an ashram or you're starting a new project somewhere. So Japa, reading Prabhupada's books, and working on the new project. So whether you're opening up a new outreach center or it's a project within a center or an ashram that you're living at, they may be counted in your top priorities. Okay, and then what are your long and short-term goals? So I'm giving 2 examples. I've never written a book in my life. So if this looks like, I'm just kind of putting numbers as an example. I have no idea how long it takes to write a book. I guess it depends on how long it is. I don't know the process, but just to give an idea of, let's say even it's your first time writing a book and you just want to make sure that you put time into it. Because what we tend to do sometimes is we think, oh, I'd love to write a book. And then a few months later, we're like, yeah, I should write a book. And then 2 years later, we're like, yeah, I should have written that book. And then 3-4 years later, someone's like, did you write that book? No, yeah, I haven't gotten to it yet. Well, you haven't gotten to it because you haven't scheduled it, right? We don't want to wait for time to just show up. Like when I have free time, I'll write something. If you want to accomplish something, schedule it. Okay, so anybody who's written a book, maybe you can comment in the comments section about how unrealistic this is or realistic. So let's say long-term goal, I want to write a book in 5 months. And my short-term goals are, I want to write 2 chapters a month. And that means 8 pages a week, 4 pages on Monday, 4 pages on Saturday. And the reason why I wrote in these numbers, not such large numbers, is because at least it's a start. At least you start somewhere. You get going writing. It gets the brain working. You've started the project. Now, once you start getting into it, You might write 16 pages a week. You know, you might write 30 pages a week. Who knows? But the point is get yourself started with something that's not overwhelming. Like, I'm just going to start with this and let's see how it goes, and I can reassess as time goes on. Then example 2. Let's say you want to learn how to cook a couple different new cuisines, Indian and Mexican. So you might say 2 months for Indian, 2 months for Mexican. I'm going to find somebody who knows what they're talking about, or I'm going to watch videos. And then I'm going to practice in the kitchen 4 hours a week, 2 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday. So that means you might, because you may be too busy during the week to do it. So you might say, well, on Saturday and on Sunday, I'm going to cook an Indian lunch. And I'm going to find a recipe or a video or whatever. And I'm going to start practicing. And so in this way, you slowly make progress. And then it inspires you as you go. It gets the ball rolling. So putting all this into your time, and this is going to be reconnected back with Japa, because you have your Japa as your top priority, but you can still get your Japa accomplished properly and still get to your other goals in life. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, so then make a list of daily activities and their length of time for each thing. So you need to sleep for 8 hours. This includes, and you know, it could be different for everybody. This would include an hour of wind down time. So that means you get up in your room, you get into bed, you have a book, or maybe you talk to a friend before you know, just whatever. You have this window of time where an hour before bed, I stop looking at the screen, I start winding down, I start reading a book, and then I sleep for, let's say, 7 hours. Then Japa needs 2 hours. Morning program, if you live in the ashram, 1.5 hours minus the Japa time. Reading an hour, evening class an hour, and so on, right? You're putting all these, you're making out the list of how long it takes to do each thing. This keeps your day from just being random, trying to fit things in randomly when you can without scheduling it the day before. Okay, so once you have that list, this is going to go back to, having this list is going to go back to, how do I prioritize my Japa? How do I make sure that I get it done, and I get it done in a time frame that is conducive to me trying to be attentive? So Japa starts the night before. You're setting your intentions. The night before, meaning that if I want to chant earlier in the day so that I could be more attentive, means I have to get to bed early enough. Because again, we always talk about getting up early, but we don't talk about going to bed early. You automatically get up early if you go to bed early. If you go to bed late and force yourself to get up early, it kind of defeats the purpose, where you're trying to be awake. Remember that pramada, that inattentiveness. You're trying to be awake during Japa, and it's a battle, right? So Japa starts the night before. I'm setting my intention that tomorrow, early in the morning, with proper sleep, I'm going to set aside a 2-hour window of time, or 1.5 hours, whatever you have, to just pay attention to Krishna as much as I can. It's easier that way than just kind of waking up randomly, trying to fit Japa in here or there. That usually ends up taking you the entire day to chant your rounds, because you haven't set aside an intentional amount of time. So I remember some time ago, I think it was a few years ago, there was somebody in the ashram who, we were going to do something together, and that person had, she had said, all right, well, let me just see when I get my rounds done and I'll let you know. So I had suggested, well, why don't you, even though the day had already started, why don't you pick a time frame where you're just going to chant your rounds from this time to this time. And it could start 20 minutes from now, a half hour from now, but whatever it is, like, just set it aside in your head. Because if you're just going to see when you get your rounds done, you're probably just going to wander around and like talk to people and get distracted by things, but set aside a time frame. So she did. And next thing you know, she had finished her Japa. She got inspired to then clean her room. There were so many, after that, after getting her rounds done, there was so many other things she got done. And then we still did what we had planned to do. And she had said that if she hadn't set aside that time in her head, she probably would have taken the entire day to chant her rounds. This was on a weekend, so there wasn't the structure of a schedule. So it starts the night before, you set your intentions, and then you know that when you make this schedule the day before, you know I've scheduled time for my japa and I still have time to do all the other things that I want to do. It's going to create inspiration. It's going to make you feel motivated to do more. Okay, so this is an example of, say, someone living in the ashram. You know, what time you're going to, so again, this is why I put it in the night before. I'm starting this schedule with the night before. So sleep and wind down is from 8:30 p.m., right? Because you got an hour to wind down. 9:30 to 4:30, that's 7 hours. And then shower 4:30 to 5. I don't know how long it takes people to shower. Japa from 5 to 6. This is again in an ashram with a morning program. Mangalarti at the Krishna house, because we have students coming in to try out spiritual life for a semester. We make it so that it doesn't scare them off with a super early, like you have to, if you move in here, you have to get up at 3:30 in the morning to be ready by 4:15. It's too big of a jump for students typically. So what ends up happening, and this is just a side note, is that at the Krishna house, even though Mangalarti isn't until 6, over time, because they were able to connect with the morning program, and at a time that felt reasonable to them, they got more inspired to get up earlier and earlier, and what you tend to find is the longer someone lives there, the earlier they get up anyways. So that's why this schedule says Mangalarti at 6. Then after Mangalarti, there's a Japa period again, 6:30 to 7:30. So there, your rounds are done, 5 to 6, and then 6:30 to 7:30. Your rounds are done for the day. Then there's Guru Puja in class, breakfast. I like to leave little bit of buffer time in my schedule, not everything one after the other. So morning program, of course, is going to be one after the other. But breakfast, I don't know, is breakfast going to be late? Am I going to end up talking to somebody a little later and sticking around breakfast a little longer than usual? So I leave a little leeway. I have a miscellaneous time from 9:30 to 10:15, and then typically the residents go and serve Krishna lunch. Then leaving yourself enough time to eat and digest and talk. At Krishna house, they have a 4th hour of service and so on. So you can see the schedule. There's some buffer times, and then there's some times where things are right one after the other because sometimes that's necessary. But if you can leave a little buffer between some things, it'll give you an extra time in case something comes up. Okay, so that's the ashram example. Then let's say a work example. At least during the week, you need to sleep 8 hours, right? There's the 1 hour wind down time, or maybe you only need a half hour. 2 hours of japa, work with the commute could be 9 hours or more, depending on how far away you work. You want to get your reading in, you've got to eat, and then still get some exercise. And then you still have some time during the week for some miscellaneous things. Talking to friends, hanging out, doing maybe your own personal deity worship, and so on. So this is a work example, again, leaving little bits of buffer time. So let's say, for example, you finish breakfast at 8:15, you don't have to leave for work till 8:30. Right? So we don't want to think that the minute we're done putting the last spoonful of breakfast in our mouth, we're up and out the door to work or whatever. So you leave in those little buffer times. And then allowing yourself some time in the evening for miscellaneous things, right? If you write out a schedule and you can get your japa done by 7 p.m. Let's say you do some japa in the morning and then you do some in the evening. Then you go out for a walk. You have some miscellaneous thing. There might be a book you want to read, a book you want to write, whatever it may be, that you can allow time to just relax. And then you still have that hour of wind down time. So, and of course, these are just examples. So you have to look and see how your life and your situation can fit into a schedule properly that works for you. Okay, and then now what we're going to do is a Saturday example of a schedule. And the first question that may come to your mind when I say this is, why the heck Saturday? Why? Why would we make a schedule on Saturday? Because for us, it's usually a time to just say, I don't have to have a schedule today. I can just do whatever I want. And that's going to be much more enjoyable than fitting myself into a schedule. My experience is that when I have a schedule on Saturday, even if it's loose, I actually enjoy the day much better, Saturday or Sunday. I definitely enjoy the day much better when I at least have some form of a schedule, even if it's only half the day that's scheduled, and particularly the first half of the day. So let's take a look at a Saturday example. So you know you want to sleep for 8 hours, you've got your japa, you still want to read. Total eating time, I increase it a little bit for Saturday. I'm going to take an hour each time for each meal because I may be having that meal with friends or family. Still want to get in my exercise for the day. And then I've got like 9.5 hours of miscellaneous time, right? So you'll definitely find that you have more time for miscellaneous stuff, hanging out with friends, if you schedule your morning sadhana. Because again, like the example I cited before with the person in the ashram, she had much more time when she set aside time for chanting. Whereas if she hadn't set aside that time, the whole day she would have just been chanting, nothing else gets done. It actually creates some stress and anxiety. One, because you're most likely not chanting attentively. If it takes you the whole day, there's not really that attempt to be attentive. And also, it's like you can't do anything else. So not only are you doing something you don't have a taste for because it's hard to be attentive, but you can't do anything else throughout the day. You can't hang out with your friends. You can't get to those projects you wanted to get to, and so on. So I'll do like a loose schedule. Sleep, wind down. I mean, just to be realistic, people tend to go to bed later on the weekends. It's helpful if you maintain the same schedule, even on the weekends, but it's not always practical. So let's say the sleep and wind down time is from 10 to 6. I'm still getting up at a reasonable hour. I'm not falling into that trap of, well, I could just stay up till midnight doing things. But I go to bed either 9 or 10 o'clock, take shower from 6 to 6:30. Still, I've got that window of time at a decent hour. I'm not waking up at 8:30 in the morning because I stayed up all night. But I'm doing my japa from 6:30 to 8:30, right? I'm getting it done before breakfast. Then it's kind of like typically you're still able to be attentive with your japa, which means you still have a taste. And then you have your breakfast, and then you can still do your reading for the day, and it's still early in the morning. So you could work on a project that you have. Once you get those things done, you could work on a project. So I wrote in here of like 11 to 2, then lunch 2 to 3. Then I still have a few hours to work on my project, exercise, and then miscellaneous in the evening might be, I have plans with my friends, I have plans with my family, right? We're going to have dinner together. We're going to go do some, fun activity. And then still get to bed at a reasonable hour. Now, again, this is just a loose schedule that I wrote as an example. Yours may be very different, but it's just to show you how you can create a schedule for yourself. And so in all of these examples, your japa and your reading of Prabhupada's books becomes your top priority. You're always scheduling around it. It's the foundation of your life. Your japa is the foundation of your life. And you're always scheduling around getting that japa done and getting it done properly. And properly means attempting to chant attentively. And so the schedules can help. And again, schedules can always be reworked. If it didn't work for you, if you found it was too tight or too loose or whatever it is, you can rework it. And even partway through the day, you can rework it. Let's say this Saturday example, let's say sleep wind down was from 10 to 6, but that didn't start till 11. Okay, just in the morning, rewrite it down. Okay, I woke up a little later. I'm going to chant a little later. I might have breakfast in between before I finish my rounds and then go back and finish my rounds and then read Prabhupada's books. Right, so you can always be reworking it and making sure that it works for you, that you're optimizing your day and you are prioritizing the most important things in your life and your spiritual practice. Okay, so summary for today's class. One is proper sleep is essential for attentive japa and maintaining physical and mental health. And managing your time efficiently can help you prioritize your japa, get enough rest, and accomplish more than just scrambling to get an attentive japa done. So you don't want to have those days where you're just kind of fumbling through the day, chanting really inattentive rounds here and there, and not really getting much else done. And so you can accomplish a lot, and I'm not saying life is just about accomplishments, but we always feel more motivated when spiritually we are attempting to reunite with Krishna, and we do something to support Prabhupada's mission, to support Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission. We can do that much more effectively if we get proper sleep and we manage our time properly. So in the next session, part 3, we're going to be talking about distractions and then the mode of goodness and beyond. So I look forward to seeing you all in that next class. Please let me know in the comments if you have any comments or questions or realizations. Please share. And I'll be including my email address too if you would like to have a discussion via email. So thank you all again for joining me. Hare Krishna, and have a nice Krishna conscious rest of your day.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.